Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
What's exciting is that we have a little over 57 participants that will be joining us, and they're from 16 different states.
Wow.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. Okay, it's 11:30, so I'm actually going to start. Welcome, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depends where you're connecting from. We're in Central Standard Time, so we're 30 minutes from lunchtime. This session is called Partnering with Families to Reopen and Reimagine Schools. It's part of our school reopening webinar series. IDRA has been holding these webinars to bring information to the community and recording it also in terms of different aspects as school reopen, what families and children need, what teachers need. And today we'll be connecting with families who will be vital for educators as they welcome students back in a world changed by COVID-19 and the social movement that we've been hearing. So we're going to be hearing from parents, grandparents, caregivers, sharing their concerns and questions about reopening schools, and also the status in terms of students' emotional well-being. My name is Aurelio Montemayor. I'm the Family Engagement Coordinator at IDRA, the Intercultural Development Research Association. And I want to welcome all of you. At some point, we're going to be opening it up for questions, but you can always either write in the chat room or send in questions. And after the initial presentations, then we're going to open it up for participants. So to start off, we have already 3 panelists connecting us. Other panelists will be joining us soon. And I'm going to ask each panelist to introduce himself or herself as I see you in my windows here, and we'll go from there. After panelists introduce themselves, and each will have a short period to each make their points about what they want to say about the status of education and the education of children. And then we'll open it up to more questions. So we'll start off. Welcome, Courtney. I just saw you. That's good. Good. So we have 4 panelists. Lourdes, would you start off? Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Lourdes Flores. I am a director of Arise Adelante. It's an organization in the area of the Rio Grande Valley. Arise stands for a resource in serving equality. We have been serving the community of the valley for over 30 years. It's an area that we serve a low-income immigrant community here in the Hidalgo County. We have a high focus on education, and we're very actively engaged with local school districts to be able to serve as a bridge between parents, children, and schools to make sure that the parents are able to support their kids and make sure that they succeed in school. I am a parent. I have 3 kids, and one of them will be a freshman this coming year, and the other one will be a senior. Very excited, very different ways and different new year for my freshman, but we're trying to make the best possible for her to be able to start her first year in high school in a totally very different way than what she has been used to.
And raising teenagers is a piece of cake. Mr. Lopez, Eric Lopez, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello, sir. My name is Eric Lopez. I have 2 daughters. One of them who just graduated from Marshall High School, and the other one is going to be a sophomore this year. My older one was in the pilot for the Mexican American Studies at John Marshall, which when they had it before this whole COVID was, I think, going very well, helping her learn more about the importance of the Latin American in Americas. So I work at Usaa. I've been there for 23 years. I work in the compliance and risk team, and basically what that just means is we review the things that the frontline people do to make sure that they're in compliance and they're doing everything that they're supposed to do to just make sure USA is in compliance with local laws and federal laws as well.
We have several states represented in the participants. So what does USAA stand for? What is the company?
The United Services Automobile Association. It's a financial institution. They started off, of course, 1922 as ensuring military members, officers insuring each other, and they've grown to become cover banking, investments, well, not investments anymore, life insurance and other financial products and needs that our members might have. So.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go to Karina from Houston, who's in Colorado right now. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. Hi, my name is Karina Quesada-Leon. I am a parent in Houston, Houston ISD. I used to be a bilingual educator for 9 years. In Pasadena, I now have 3 children in HISD, a 13-year-old going into 8th grade, a 9-year-old going into 4th, and a 7-year-old going into 2nd grade.
It's a nice spread to manage. And also, Karina is part of our Education Cafe group in Houston, a collection of parents wanting to have excellent schools for all their children. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you.
Okay, Mercedes, are you on?
I am on. Hold on.
Please introduce yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Mercedes Bristol, and I am Executive Director of Texas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. I have raised 5 grandkids. When I've got the kids, they range from 3 months to 9 years, and now they are 9 years to 18 years. So one has just graduated from NISD. Here in San Antonio, I have 2 more in high school, 1 in middle school and 1 in elementary school. So education is a big part of our family. My involvement. Parenting for the second time has not been easy. So we developed this organization to help grandparents navigate the system and get them resources. We have various grandparents from not speaking English to being very proficient in technology. So we have offered them computer classes, and whatever the need is, we connect them with resources. So that's part of what I do with the nonprofit, and with the personal experience I've had in raising the 5 grandkids with a lot of emotional and mental conditions, then it's been very hard to navigate the school system myself and get the support that we need from schools. And so I've become an advocate at the school, attending art meetings and that kind of stuff.
And as I told Lourdes, raising grandchildren is a piece of cake, especially when they're teenagers, right?
And especially at my age.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson, you're with us. Would you tell us about yourself, please?
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me today. I am the founder and executive director of an organization called the Excellence and Advancement Foundation. Our mission is to transform how communities combat the school to prison pipeline. And we look at really every single level of the ecosystem. So we serve kids who've never had any issues with school discipline, have great grades. I mean, they're doing great in school, but we understand that if you are a child that's Black or brown, you are at greater risk of being involved in the school to prison pipeline. We have services for parents, community stakeholders, and leaders, trainings for teachers and principals. So that's our sort of advocacy piece. But then we also directly serve youth and their families that have been involved or entangled in the school discipline and criminal justice systems. We don't have this sort of cookie cutter model of everybody goes to the same thing, you get a certificate and a check mark. We actually meet with every single family individually and develop services around what that particular family needs. And so it could be mental health services, it could be help with resources around food security, it could be case management at school, it could be meeting with principals and counselors around special education needs, their behavior plans, their intervention plans, so on and so forth. And so the services are wide and broad. And most of our students in that particular intervention are with us for a full year. So we serve the Central Texas area primarily, but most importantly, I am a mom of 2 really fabulous children. I have a 19-year-old and a 13-year-old. So my 19-year-old will be a sophomore in college this year. So as a parent with a college student, We are thinking about some of the same sort of safety issues around sending our child back to a university setting where they are technically adults, but as many of the people on this call understand, your brain isn't fully developed until you're 24. And so the nervousness
And raising
around
teenagers and young adults is a piece of cake, right?
right. So, the nervousness of sending a university student back to their campus and how the campus might handle the everyday activity, but concerned about how the youth or young adults will manage their partying and their social time and that sort of safety. And my 8th grader, who right now the schools are talking about bringing them back full time, either hybrid, some days online, some days in person, or in person every single day. So we are really, as a family, grappling with what that looks like for us and how to move forward. And I'm looking towards it as an organization because we're thinking about how kids who've already experienced a tremendous amount of trauma are going back to school post-COVID and going back into schools where there are police officers inside their schools. And so lots of things happening, and I am looking forward to being on this panel with so many other wonderful parents to just talk about what that looks like.
Thank you. So now each panelist will have about 5 minutes to give your sense of the status quo. What are the things like for your families, the families you work with, the families you know, their education of the children in this context of the COVID-19 separation, and also what you see is going to happen, and some of you have already talked about this, is what you want to see happen as schools reopen, what will make sense for you, for the education of your children, and safety for everybody. So I'm going to go back to Lourdes, starting with you, and then I'll go around Robin the way we did the introductions. Lourdes?
Yes, well, so for this time, just want to mention that, Arise, as I mentioned earlier, we have been serving, and working with these families for a very long time. We have seen, firsthand their struggles that the kids, the families have had with the education of their kids. Their struggle of being able to make sure that their kids succeed in school because it's more challenging as serving in the areas or working with colonias, rural areas where there is a sometimes, unfortunately, a disconnection or a lack of connectivity with internet, with various issues, and the language, parents not being very not being very comfortable with English. Also, this idea, like a lot of families coming from Mexico, being immigrants, it's this concept of either being new in the school system here, not knowing exactly how it works, with this mind of thinking, well, school knows better, and the teachers, they know better, and they're here to help our kids, with the idea of sometimes our kids struggling with being labeled from colonias, from the Colonia Mexico Chiquito, or different things. It has been very challenging.
Just to say, a colonia is an unincorporated community, usually isn't part of a municipality, so they only have county services and no municipal services generally. And there are hundreds of them along the border from El Paso all the way to Brownsville.
Yes, in the Hidalgo County, here where we are in the Rio Grande Valley, there's about 1,400 colonias just in the Hidalgo County. There's a total of 4 counties, and so then infrastructure plays a big role in our colonias, because there is not a lot of it. There has been many changes, and there are good changes, but we still have a lot more to go. So the kids, it hasn't been easy, and it's not easy for them, for the families in the colonias. Sometimes it can be misinterpreted as parents are not they don't care, or because they don't participate or they don't engage, but it's not really that, parents having to work, and as many others do. So our idea and our focus is to be able to make this bridge between the schools, the parents, the children, and to be able to make sure that the kids succeed, and that able to move on to college and have éxito or succeed. So what we have experienced now with COVID-19, it hasn't been easy. Just as you know, for the whole nation, for the whole world, it's been very challenging. In the area of education, we have had the experience of all these issues that I mentioned, the infrastructure, the connectivity, the internet, the lack of resources for our families has just made it even worse, you know, in more challenging conditions, where parents continue to not be able to connect, or the kids will be having already what we experienced that towards the end of the school year, where parents were not, or kids, I'm sorry, were having difficulties connecting to Google Classroom or having internet or having a computer, even though some schools did lend them a computer. There were many challenges they were facing. You know, not everybody at home has a computer, a desktop or laptop. Most of the time what we parents use or kids use is a phone. And so yes, some of it might not even be a smartphone. You know, it could be a flip phone, and it's just, yeah, and it is just, you know, more and more challenging. So we have been you know, just trying to work with our community, with our families. At the beginning, we did a survey, and figuring out how and what a need do we attend to. You know, we don't have, as an organization, we don't have enough computers to go around and give them to everybody. Some do. The school took care of that in some cases. I'm sure they also struggle to find you know, resources to provide to the kids a computer. But like internet, or even if there is internet, there's not enough energy or power to be able to have a good signal. So those are some things. And then if you do have a computer, or you do have internet, or you have access to internet, is how do I navigate Google Classroom? I'm not sure how to troubleshoot a computer, you know, things like that, technical issues that our families have to deal with, and our families, our parents, some might be, you know, can manage or can figure out some parts of a computer, not when we have more technical issues. So right now, we also talk to parents about, you know, deciding what you want to do when this new school year starts. You know, this plan, as Ms. Robinson was mentioning about going, or like going, the options of going to school present, or also there was some other options of doing virtual, like part school, part at home, and then at home. And they were like basically throughout 3 options that were offered to the parents, and the schools did surveys and everything. And we went ahead and talked to different people. Of course, they want to do it from home. They want the kids to be safe at home. And then how do you make sure that the kids get the appropriate, you know, information or class and all their work that they need to do. One of the things just today, I believe, the Hidalgo County Health Department has issued an order that schools cannot have, here in the Valley, the schools cannot have classes in person, and they have to be virtual. So that has been already decided, something that we are happy with, but now we need to find out is how do we make sure that kids get the appropriate you know, teaching, that the kids have all the tools that they require to be able to receive all the instructions properly from their home. There's many issues, whether they decided to go and be present or here at home, because now also as a working parent, like how do I make sure that my second grader, my third grader, or my children, you know, if I have 3, 4, how do I make sure that they're safe at home doing their work? So we knew it was going to be difficult, and we knew either way, deciding one way or the other was going to have its challenges. I think that I, particularly as a parent, I'm happy because kids will be safe at home, And now I need to figure out, how do I make sure that they have the tools and that they have all that it takes to be able to be following along the the instructions, as well as the teachers. They need to figure out exactly how are they going to provide that instructions in a totally different way as they have been doing it for many years. So it's all an experience. It's something new that we need to learn. We need to figure it out together. I think that's an important thing, that we need to figure out together, that we come together and explore, brainstorm. How do we make sure that our children succeed? It's not a matter of just the school. It's not a matter of just the parents. It's a matter of the whole community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you because later on I want you to talk about the transportation issue and how many children need to take the bus to go to school. Okay. Mr. Lopez, Eric Lopez, talk to us about wisdom.
Oh, yes, sir. So I'll talk first about my children's the impact that it had emotionally, just moving from, of course, being in school to trying to learn online. So the biggest issue that they encountered is just really the source material that they had to learn from, and just having something static that they were given and without a particular structure other than they should turn in an assignment by a particular day, I think was pretty challenging. It required a lot of really just redirecting them, keep redirecting them back and back to make sure that they finished their product. So from just a learning perspective, I asked both of them individually, the older one and the younger, and they both encountered issues with that being an effective method of learning, just having it strictly just the material there. Some of the teachers had videos which they just read the notes really. Some of them had notes that accompanied it that they could read, but some of them they just have to keep listening to the video over and over. And so for my daughters, especially the younger one, trying to learn from just watching a video was really particularly challenging to her. And I teach a lot of subjects here at Usaa. I actually had where I would teach new hires on how to do particular jobs and skills. So I had some experience, I thought, training, which would translate well. But when it comes to teaching a kid, 18-year-old, she was 17 at the time. It's different. There's no comparison to teach an adult something, and especially if it's a subject in which you're not familiar. And no matter how well I did back in high school 25 years ago, it's not the same. So the method that they from just that perspective, it was very difficult for them. Not to mention just not interacting with their friends and seeing them. So that part of it was just tough on them. But just strictly focusing on the learning from it, it was challenging. I asked them what could be more effective. They thought that particularly having structure might help. So if they had, on Monday a teacher was, if it stayed social distancing and they stayed learning over the internet, virtual learning, then having a teacher actually teach in class where they could see a video like on Monday or see them live, or Monday have the material from them, time where they could actually ask questions live. That would also be something that would be very helpful, because when they had questions, I know that it's very difficult for the teachers as well. They didn't always get a timely response to trying to understand some of the material. So just from the emotional point of view, it was challenging for them. The technical aspects is, as I said, they luckily the Northside Independent School District in San Antonio was very good. They passed out for those who needed them laptops, Wi-Fi, little tokens or whatever that you could connect to the internet. We were fortunate that we had resources to use that, but from a technical aspect, well, what even I found was off-putting was I would see my daughter complete an assignment and I would see her submit it. And I would see her submit them because we got to a point where we were making sure she was submitting them. And then I would still get an email saying, this assignment hasn't been submitted and this assignment hasn't been submitted. So it's like, where was the disconnect? I know I entered it. Not me. I know she entered. I saw her physically click submit. I saw her finish everything in there and send it, and they still didn't get all of the material. And sometimes she would go back in there and just submit it a second time, even though it had said it was successfully submitted. So there's had some technological issues that that they encountered. So from that, they had a tough part just being emotional away from, like my daughter missed the prom, missed the graduation. It was like graduation was a Wednesday, Wednesday afternoon. And it just flew by. And so just they missed a lot of just the social interaction, but also then just I don't think they learned as effectively. Luckily, my daughter, both of them were able to pass. They did completed all the assignments at the very end, but do I say would I say confident that they learned the subject material? I would think no. I would think if they did another test, would they have mastery of that, or at least retained a lot of the information? I don't know. I think that method, if it carries on next year, needs to change. So from that point of view, I think that there just needs to be an enhancement of how the material is presented to these students, that there is more of a rigid structure, which I've seen both of these children seem to thrive. And this seemed to be more, from what I recall, like the way that college would be. A college, like when I did online learning, you would have, here are the assignments, they're due by this day, here are the notes, go ahead and learn. And you'd have some discussion here and there, but you really learned on your own. You learned a lot of it this was on the University of the Incarnate Word, which is in San Antonio. But at the children's age, that isn't the best way they learned. And then finally, from a parent's perspective, I do have a concern if they're going back to school. I want them to be safe. I love my children. I know obviously everyone loves their children, but I want them to learn. I feel that what's the best way to make sure they're safe when they're learning, and if it's still virtual, then hey, let's give them the best possible method of teaching them so that they hopefully can learn from it, that they can be actively engaged as the year progresses. And then if it has to be in person, then what can they do to make sure that, hey, for me, if, for example, going to church, wearing a mask for even an hour is not very easy. It's not easy to sit there for just an hour and have a mask, even if you're just sitting up and down. But for a child to try to sit through, 7 hours, 8 hours of wearing a mask, staying away from the other people, not touching their faces, that's a challenge in itself. So how the school is going to be able to say, come to school, they'll be safe, they'll wear masks, they'll social distance. What about passing period? Like my daughter's Marshall High School, there's 1,000 kids at least. How are they going to safely navigate walking through that? So that's my concern as a parent, is how would they be safe at the school during passing period, and then how would they really just even in the classroom be safe? And then finally, if one of the children gets sick or one of the teachers gets sick, what would happen then? Does everyone go home for 2 weeks and then they learn just from virtually? And then how far does that go before they go back and make sure everyone's safe? And then do they get tested? That type of thing. So that's just my part of it, and those are some of my concerns as a parent, and then just directly from my children when I ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Let's go to the grandparents. Mercedes, Mrs. Bristol. Is your mic on, Mercedes? Is Mercedes still with us? Okay, we'll go to, are you on?
I'm on.
Okay, good.
Okay. The challenge for the grandparents has always been, as housing and how to keep secure, the children and food insecurities and all of those things. So with COVID coming along, their status totally changed. Like now grandparents are not able to go to the supermarket because of the hazard of the COVID. They don't have transportation. And then they're stuck at home now with the children that are the same thing as Lourdes has said, and Mr. Lopez, that it's a challenge for them at their age to be able to give these children the technology support that they need. So imagine a grandparent with a flip phone, like Lourdes says, and without knowing any of the technology has been very challenging for about 40% of our grandparents to be able to do this online school. And so for me personally, I have, like I said before, I have from 9 years old to the one that just graduated, and they're all various learning in a learning scale. So the 15-year-old just didn't want to do it, and the he had a lot of challenges. So it's just very difficult for us to comprehend how to do that. You mentioned transportation also. These kids go to school on public transportation. And a lot of the grandparents are concerned about, you know, putting our kids back into school at our age and being exposed to COVID. So I know my granddaughter who is pregnant, just tested positive for COVID. So we have to be really extra careful and staying away from our family even members. So as far as the educational piece, I have 4 kids with ADHD. So for them to be sitting at a computer trying to do the assignments, like Mr. Lopez said, on their own, basically, and reading the instructions has been very challenging for some of them, and where they can't even do it. Some of them can cry. I have some grandparents that say that my granddaughter just cries and doesn't want to even get on the computer. She does, you know, she's intimidated by not having that one-to-one. And it's been very challenging for our grandparents. We have one grandmother that has three children, and she's on a walker. She can't, she doesn't speak English. And so how do we help her? How do we reach out to be able to support her? And, you know, the schools, again, mentioning the submitting the assignments, I would tell my kids, it says it's not submitted. And they said, but I did. And then the other challenge I had was, I go into the it's called HAC in NISD, you know, home access computers.
What's NISD?
Northside Independent School District.
Good, thank you.
So so I would go in and check their grades and see what assignments were missing, and I could see that there's a lot of assignments, or the teachers were not putting in the assignments on time. So here I am, you know, consistently trying to make my grandkids accountable for the assignments that were not turned in. And then the downfall is, I understand the teachers were learning and they were trying to catch up and try, but there was no communication between the computer, the teachers, and ourselves. So there was a lot of discrepancies. I'm hoping that this year coming, they're talking about the first 6 to 8 weeks of being online schooling. I'm hoping that they worked out some of these kinks where we can actually be able to know what our kids are doing, how they're doing, and how we can educate ourselves and trying to help them.
Thank you. Let's go to Dr. Robinson. Is your mic open?
Yes.
What's the context for you?
Context for, I have to say that this pandemic and schooling, my own children, made me really recognize my own privilege in ways that I hadn't before. Just a tremendous amount of privilege when I think about my children each had a laptop, and we have enough connectivity in our home where both of my children could work, my husband and I could work. We have enough education between the two of us. You know, I have a PhD, so when there were questions or concerns about homework, I was able to help. My husband's in engineering, so if there were math questions, we were able to help. I had no idea what to do with the math, but just thinking about all of that privilege, and even with that privilege, and my daughter's school did a great job in terms of every single day she had a designated time to get on her laptop. The Zoom calls were with her actual teachers. They taught lessons every day, so there was scheduled lessons time. So face-to-face with their teacher. And then between 5 and 7, that was homework time, and they could have one-on-one time with their teacher. So I recognized that in her space, the school was doing some really great things around ensuring education. My son, who's a university student, he's a film major. So for him, it was really difficult because film is a practical study. So you make films, you distribute them, there's lots of human interaction. So for him, not having that sort of in-person connection and being able to be on location and movie sets in New Orleans made a huge difference. And so with that said, I was speaking to parents that we serve who we were trying to make sure their children had access. As Ms. Flores mentioned, We were making sure they had the workbooks and the packets and all of the things that, and I had parents say to me, finish the 7th grade. And so we were literally case managing and spending time helping kids with schoolwork and homework, and trying to help the parents learn how to navigate the massive amount of lack of communication that was happening with the school, on top of the communication that was happening for our Spanish speaking parents wasn't always really clear, because the Spanish that was communicated via the email was not really the Spanish that they spoke. And so it was a massive amount of sort of coordinating. So when I think about children going back to school for the fall, my biggest concern is their safety. And I recognize that I don't have elementary school children, but I think about the elementary school children a lot, because if we're asking elementary school children to wear masks every day, that seems absurd to me. Those masks will be on their elbows, on their ankles, they will be flicked across the room. And then we're talking about, how do teachers manage that? And are they going to over discipline children, especially Black and brown children, because they can't keep their mask on, because they're doing what is developmentally appropriate for their age? And so I'm really concerned about, how are we really going to keep children safe? And if we don't go back to school, not just our parents that have limited resources, but even parents who are fully resourced. We have parents that we deal with who have formal education, who are considered middle class, and they struggled with teaching their children at home. And so we have this sort of, I think there's struggles on sides in terms of parents having to work all day. For our Title I schools, who have a lot of essential workers in the school, how is the spread going to look different in those schools versus our more affluent and overly resourced schools? And so it's so complex and so complicated. But I think that the main thing that I don't hear people talking about is safety. Like, how are we going to ensure that children stay well, in both their mental health and their physical health? I think is really at stake during these times.
Thank you. Karina, is your mic on?
Okay, my mic is on.
Yes. Good.
So where to begin? So as far as I talked to I can talk about myself and my personal experience, and then some of the experiences of the parents at the school in the north side of Houston, where we've been organizing.
Let me just mention a little bit about that. Karina is part of a network of an organization that we formed called Education CAFE. It's parents coming together to influence policy and practice in their schools. And in the Houston Independent School District, the north side sector we work with, there's a feeder pattern of elementary, middle school, and high school that we work with. And Karina is a very active parent in that group. The majority of the parents are Latinos, and many of them don't speak English. Okay.
That's correct. So some of the issues that I've been talking to them, to some of the parents about, or they've been messaging me, are about communication, because the communication at the elementary school where our children are at is awful. Like, communication is non-existent. Aurelio knows, like, there were teachers pulled out of the classroom and put into different grade levels December 2nd, didn't tell any of the parents, like, their kids just didn't have their teachers anymore. So these issues happen. And so there's an issue with communication, with trust. I know the principal there has, we have her on tape, on recording, saying, let your kids, I will tell my parents to bring in their kids and leave them here when they're sick until 9:30, so we can count them present and then send them home. And so you had a lot of kids with the flu in class. Like, my child's best friend had the flu, was going to school every day. So those are things that we don't trust. The parents don't trust. I don't trust. This school and certainly not the district, to keep our children safe. You know, as far as the grading policies, that was another
Yes.
issue. What? Oh, can you hear me?
Keep going. You were freezing a little bit. Keep going.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my internet is not so good. I'm in the Rockies.
Okay.
So the
Oh, what a cross you bear.
I know, it's a huge cross, I know. So the grading policy, that was another thing. I know some of the other panelists were just talking about that. So in HISD, they were going to grade, but just that the grade at the end wasn't going to, affect you negatively. The issue was that, like for my eldest child, he was doing his assignment, but then sometimes the assignments would be embedded in different places and we'd have to go into a scavenger hunt to go look for them. My youngest child, again, like Courtney said earlier, I am one of these parents that has a tremendous amount of privilege. I'm an elementary school teacher. I had a daughter that was finishing up third grade. I taught third grade bilingual, and so they're in a dual language classroom. So what I ended up doing is I didn't have my children participate with what the school was doing, because what they were doing was like basically putting them on Imagine Math, Imagine Learning for hours at a time. And I just wasn't in agreement with that. That's not actual, learning. So I did my own materials, but with my eldest child who's autistic, in seventh grade, I let him participate with what was going on in the school. And, there was constant like hassling and bothering parents about like, where's this assignment? It's like, no, it got turned in. And then he was crying oftentimes because he's ADHD, he's anxiety, he has autism. And so it was a really, really frustrating time. He started begging me to please make his own curriculum like I had for the other kids, because this was too difficult. And I also know that that's another concern going forward. Like if we do go virtual, how are our kids with special needs, how will they be serviced? Like how will they be safely serviced? And I hear people talking about they should be like the kids that are like behind, and our sped ed kids should be the first ones in. And part of me agrees, and part of me is like, why do they have to be the sacrificial lambs? Like I just don't I don't know where I am on all that. Let me see. Again, some of the other people mentioned not every student having a computer, having internet access. Then there was technical questions with our parents about teaching, right? Because they were basically like having to teach at home and not understanding all these technical terms. I had a parents calling me with the schools basically bullying them into a sped ed placement for their child that they didn't agree with. This again in the middle of a pandemic, not being able to meet face to face, and just a lot of questions, parents not speaking the language and certainly not understanding all the technical terms that come with ARDS and special education, and navigate. That's hard to do even without a pandemic. And so the other thing that parents have been asking as far as like the virtual, if it seems like we might be going that way, what does that look like? What will that be? So, will schools require students to log in for a certain amount of time in front of a computer on a learning program? The ladies that I've been speaking to have been telling me that they are not sending their kids back because they do not trust the school, but they're also wondering what learning online will be like, and if it'll be like it was this past semester, which was incredibly challenging. Some teachers don't like the parents, and some teachers won't communicate with the parents, and so they leave some of these students high and dry because they didn't like the parents. And so there's just a host of issues going on. So
I just want to ask you and then everybody else. Courtney talked about privilege. I'd like for each of you to tell us what school district your children or grandchildren are going to, and what resources what technology resources you had at home. So starting with you, Karina, your school district is?
Houston Independent School District.
It's the largest in Texas, one of the largest in the nation.
Yes, and it's
And so what resources did your children have at home?
my kids, they have my child would use the eldest would use my laptop, and then they have the younger ones have tablets, but they're like real cheapy tablets. But again, I didn't have my kids, the younger ones, I didn't allow them on their tablets. So, but they did
Okay.
have that available. I guess they could have done it on there.
Did any of them use their cell phone for schoolwork?
No, that would have been that I just couldn't imagine like anytime I had to like do something on my computer, like my eldest
Okay.
was fighting me for my computer.
Okay.
He has a cell phone,
Okay.
but it would have been impossible. I mean, so
Okay.
hard to do it.
Okay. Eric, what school district do your children go to, and what resources did they have at home?
My children, they're here in San Antonio. They go into the Northside Independent School District. And the resources they had here, of course, we had broadband, which even though it's supposed to be, it's 400 Mbps, which should be crazy fast. When you realize when you have like 3 or 4 different people on it at the same time, it is not as steady as can be, but we did have high-speed internet. My children, they both had laptops, but what I found is they prefer to use their cell phones at times. They said that it was easier for them, especially if they're just reading material, that it was easier on their eyes, and they could read it downstairs, they could read it in their bed sideways, and so I think a lot of what they used the laptops for were actually completing the homework or completing the assignments. But if there was reading material, they preferred the cell phones to use it. So they had the cell phones and they had the laptops and the high-speed internet.
Thank you. Courtney, what school district do your children go to, and what resources did they have at home?
So my daughter, we're in the Lourdes ISD school district. However, at the beginning of the school year, daughter out of the public school system and into a private school. So this year she was in private school, and lots of resources at home because my husband works in technology. So everyone had their own laptop. We have wireless. So lots of resources. And
Did they use their phone too? Did they use their phone for part of their schoolwork or not?
They didn't. But the children that we served, they used their phones a lot, and it was a mess. It was a mess. And gosh, it was a mess. Like, I don't even know how else to say that. It is
okay. Good.
Yeah. They can't do all the things they need to do on a smartphone. It is just too challenging and too difficult. We hosted our youth summit this year virtually, and a lot of our children were on cell phones, and they were able to do that in a summit environment, a conference environment. But in terms of activities and assignments, it's not possible. It's not possible for them to do it effectively.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mercedes, what school district do your grandchildren go to, and what resources did you have at home for them?
I go to the Northside Independent School District, just like Mr. Lopez, and we NISD did give one Chromebook to every 3 children. So I had 4 kids. I was able to get 2 Chromebooks, and I have a couple of computers at home. So they all had a device to be working on. None of my grandkids have cell phones, so that wasn't an issue for our family. But and for the same reason, because you call them smartphones, but they're not that smart. They can't do everything that we want them to do. But nevertheless, it was a challenge for them to just be on the focused. The focus was the main challenger. And of course, we talked about weband, right? Even like Mr. Lopez said, bandwidth. Yeah. You have a high-speed internet, but with having 5 people on a computers and all the other stuff going on, and some of the kids not doing the work and watching videotapes, so that was a challenge to be able to be connected.
And you have some grandchildren with special needs too.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Who is Lourdes? What school district do your children attend, and what resources did they have at home?
Yes, my kids, they go to Palmview High School. That's La Joya district here in the Rio Grande Valley. And they had, gracias a Dios, they had the equipment, devices, a computer, a desktop. They had enough to be able to do their homework in terms of devices. They have a phone, and so the little one, I would see her, and I would see her at times, connect with with her cell phone, and that is because one of the things that we had at the beginning was that I had a hotspot, so I did not have Wi-Fi at the time of all this, when all this started. We did not have Wi-Fi access here at home. I had decided to just go with the hotspot for my work, and since they had a cell phone, they were fine. But then this pandemic happened, and I found myself working from home, and then the kids having to work with the internet, and we started having some issues, some difficulties, and some challenges. The hotspot was not enough, and different things. So then that's when I got I had to connect, or I had to get the Wi-Fi access and connect it back on my at home. Since I had it before, it was easy. It was an easy process. So then we started connecting and started using the internet, the Wi-Fi.
And you also have a printer at home.
I do. Yes. So the kids, I have a printer. I have, enough information or equipment. I'm sorry, to be able for my kids to have their do their homework. At the beginning, another challenge that we had was, for example, one of them, my oldest kid. So the computer, the laptop that he was using, we had just picked it up from Best Buy to have it cleaned, and we started it again. It was, I don't know, it was clean.
Refurbished, yeah.
Okay, so when he had to start doing his work, he had to download or use this program that he was using, and he needed to download and submit his homework. It was a PDF, but it was some kind of, please, I know how to use my computer. I'm not very familiar with all the program and all the software. So it was a PDF. For me, it was easy. I said, oh, that's easy. Just download it, print it, and do it, and scan it, and send it to the school. For some reason, he was having a lot of issues and difficulties with that. He was downloading it, and somehow it wasn't, he kept asking to do something else and to do something else. I guess it was to upgrade. He was having a difficulty with that. So finally I said, you know what, let's do it on my laptop. I can navigate that one easier, and I can work with that. And so we did it. It took a while. Well, he was very anxious and very, because I found out that homework needed to be in by a certain time. And so then I said, why are you waiting till the last minute? This is my oldest, the one going in the junior year kid, and who's responsible, who is working well and doesn't need any direction from me. Maybe we'll ask some questions if needed, but why are you waiting till the last minute? It turns out that he had been having that challenge for at least 3 days. And he had not asked me. And I said, why did you wait? He says, no, Mom, I've been having this difficulty. Have you talked to the teachers?
I'm going to do it myself.
Yes. So then finally we figured it out from my computer, and then he submitted it. But it was the last minute, if it needed to be by 11, he probably submitted it by 11:30, 11:40. So that was another challenge, I know it was mentioned about the deadlines and times like that homework needed to be submitted by a certain time. That was difficult. The other part is that, again, there's programs, there's information that is different programs. For example, here, this is new, this WebEx or this Cisco, whatever this virtual way of communicating is new for me. I'm more used to something else, to Zoom. And when I can do different programs on my computer, what he was dealing with, Google Classroom, couldn't help him. So I just relied on him that he knew how to manage it. When I heard that he was able to do it, then as soon as somebody called me and asked me to help her with that, I said, you know what, I cannot help you, but my son can. So it was sort of like, using the students or using my son to be able to help others. But like, as a parent, if my son had not known how to use the Google Classroom, then I wouldn't have been able to help them.
Okay, thank you. Ana Ramon, one of our staff members, is checking the Q&A list and the chat room. Ana, are there any questions from the viewing group?
Thus far, I don't see any questions.
Okay, well, let me ask the panelists, is there something that hasn't been mentioned that you want to add to the status quo or recommendation to schools? And just whoever wants to just go for it.
I think the one thing I didn't mention earlier was how much the lack of human interaction impacted the children. And so I know that I talked about the safety and the concerns that all the parents on the panelists talked about putting kids in these spaces, but the human interaction is so needed. And schools really, really, really have to get their teachers prepared to use GoToMeet, WebEx, Zoom, like all of these different platforms, so that they're having face-to-face interaction with students. So if students are not going to be in a classroom, there must be some face-to-face interaction. The worksheets that they were sending home and the videos, it isn't enough. It isn't enough. It's problematic in so many ways, both from a learning perspective, but also from a connection perspective. In order for children to learn, they often need to feel connected to the educator. And there has to be some human connection. This isn't the same. I mean, if we were all, in person together, our interactions would be different, but at least we get to see a person's eyes and we get to see their expressions, and we get to sense how they feel. And I think we need to ensure that that is happening in every single school, because so many of the kids that we serve were getting packets and workbooks and paper, especially our middle school. We're getting a lot of paper, and
Lourdes mentioned something that parents whose children didn't have good connection at home were going to pick up packets at schools, and they would give them a bag. And one parent was concerned it put together in a way that they weren't going to take the virus home with that bag of materials. But as that was being done, there was no conversation, there was no communication. And Lourdes said, well, the principal is a teacher there. Interact, you're already there, but it was just like a kind of a distant cold, here's the materials, take them home kind of stuff. Maybe with some concern because of the virus, but anyway, what you're saying about communication is so important. One parent from the Donna Independent School District, it is one of the areas that Arise works very closely with, mentioned that that district had not had that strong a relationship with parents with previous administrations. The teacher was calling the home at least once a week and talking to the parent and to the child. And it was like, the irony is that now they had a personal communication because of the separation, but the parents were like happy, overjoyed that not only was the teacher calling the student on the phone, how you doing, but also talking to mom and saying in Spanish, ¿Cómo está? And stuff like that. So that it just validates, Courtney, what you were saying.
Aurelio, kind of in line with the kind of conversations we're having, there was a question posed asking if packets, like at-home packets and books, if they would be useful in addition to online learning. So if they were incorporated into the curriculum, and if any panelists are interested in addressing that question.
How many of you of the panelists had experience with take-home packets?
We did. We did. We picked up one for one of my kids, and then the other packet also arrived by mail. At one point, I mean, this is nothing the packet that was received when I gave it to my daughter, she says, "Oh, I already did all this homework."
Because
and
she did it online. She had done it online.
she
Yeah.
had done it online. And again, like, this is a freshman. She's 14 years old. I am thinking that she's trying to, or like there is some kind of a discipline or structure, like, get your homework, get it done, and she would get it done. I would think that the little ones in elementary, which also, like, we need to stress and be very or concerned about them, or be thinking about the way they also learn, the way it will be easier for them. So I would think this would be very helpful for them, especially for the parents, to be able to help the kid, when they sit down with a piece of paper and then they can do their work. I would think it will be easier for the elementary kids. One part, and this is going to that I want to share, that in connection with having that relationship, or talking with the teacher, I received some text, which I was also very happy with, kind of updating me or letting me know how my son is doing and how he's doing with his work and everything, which I really appreciate that. I think that was great. I did not, prior or before that, I wasn't receiving many texts unless my son was not doing well, unless he was misbehaving or things like that. But I did receive a couple of texts, during this time, telling me that he was doing well, or that he had submitted all his work and everything, which I was very thankful and very happy for. One of the things that I just want to mention also is that the Arise, during our summer program, we did a whole 5 weeks of program activities, different things, books, different creative things, so that we could bring home to the parents or to the families, just have the kids some board games, different things that they could do, some soccer balls and different things. We did that, and also a lot of the activities varied according to the age. But one of the things that we did, and we decided to do on Friday, was provide like a recipe where the kids could follow the recipes, some simple, making cupcakes or making popcorn or Rice Krispies, simple things, simple instructions that the kids could follow, and that they could do it together as a family, the siblings or the older kid or somebody to just help them and support. They sent some pictures to us, and the kids were just really like happy, and see their faces. And of course, when they were eating, that's the best part of it, that they were eating their Rice Krispies or the popcorn or whatever they were making. So that was like one of the things that we found very, one of the activities that we found that they were like, they kept sending us pictures of those hands-on activities, those cooking activities, that we thought that it was important for them to also have this concept of educational, where they could read and follow along or read out loud or different things, but then at the same time have fun and interact as a family. So just, I just felt like at times maybe the schools could also think of some fun, creative things, that concepts that can also be taught at home as a whole family, and not just something that you have to just read along and answer these questions.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that in our conversations with Arise and with other people was, there's a question about when the older sibling becomes the tutor or the guide for the younger one. And Mercedes, you mentioned that you had one of your grandchildren become the technology mentor and homework supporter for the younger one. One idea is that schools can support the older children in the homes to help send materials, so that, for example, the junior high or the high school student can help the third grader in the house, but also give community service hours to the older student. In other words, acknowledge the work that the teenager is doing by saying, okay, document the amount of time you've used in helping your siblings or helping others online, and set up a tech mentor setup, because it has to be intergenerational and everybody support everything, but also take advantage of the fact that when you help a teenager understand what social service is, because they're helping their little brother or little sister with their homework. And if there was a larger setting, they could do online counseling assistance, validate that the school validate that as service. And that's important. Arise has a long history of having a summer program that didn't happen this year, where the teenagers in their neighborhoods and some of their preteens become mentors for a whole month, where they guide the kids through tutoring and games and stuff like that. And it's been a wonderful tradition for how many years now, Miss Lourdes?
For over 20 years that we've been doing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so does anybody else think, let's see.
Aurelio, can I just say like that?
Sure.
That aside from the hours, and I'm gonna no voy a decir más. Aside from the hours that they're being credited for, the project-based learning concept could also be, that those type of activities, the work that they're doing with the kids, that can be connected with what the kids can do, are asked to do at school, like so that there's no duplicate work for the kids or doing more, or that they feel like now I have this big responsibility of doing that. But instead, if the kid can see it as, oh, this is something that I need to do at the school, and it's gonna help me with my project or with my own homework, it's aside from all the experience that the kids will be getting. Pero yeah, project-based learning would be a great opportunity there.
Let's see, Abuelita, how did it turn out, Miss Bristol, at home with one of your grandchildren being a mentor to another one? Yeah, you reported that experience. How did it go with that work in terms of having one of your grandchildren helping the younger ones?
It went very well. Marina is 11 and Paul is 9, and they both had the same teacher when they were in Gifted and Talented. She's now in middle school, but they keep in contact. And so what the teacher did, she contacted Marina and would tell her, Paul hasn't submitted this or this. And then Marina would come back to me and tell me, Grandma, he hasn't submitted his project. So then I took advantage of that. So I started paying her to be able to keep an eye on him and make sure that he was turning in all his work. So that worked very well for me. One of the things that I was thinking about when you asked that question, what would help? I think that putting a schedule. I think the schools were thrown into panic mode to be able to give the kids assignments online. So on their behalf, I like to say that it was both learning a curve for both the school and for the students. But I think going forward, if they have a plan together at the beginning of the week, and maybe send that plan to the parent or grandparent, or whether it's by mail or whatever, then we know what the child needs to be focusing on. I understand that they're going to be online now, and that they're going to have to be on attending the school period via virtual training. So I think that is going to make them a little more accountable, if that's true, and they will get some of the information through that classroom that way. But I'm not sure how it's going to go.
The plans are emerging, and I mean, there's still state and national messages are sometimes in conflict with what the district wants to do. Mm-hmm. Well, each of you as parents, what do you want to, if nothing else, what do you want to tell the district? Bottom line, this is what we want you to listen to us as parents tell you about what we need, knowing that this is a crisis, and distance learning is going to continue to some degree. What do you want to tell the districts? Whoever wants to start.
This is Derek. I'll go. What I would just like to tell the districts is I know that this is, I'm president for a lot of these teachers doing online and trying to establish a curriculum where one hasn't been done before, to make sure that learning is successful. But what I would say is just make sure that as you're moving forward, just keep in mind that these kids, they're going through, as somebody else mentioned, they have a lot of pressure from as far as not seeing friends, not interacting with anybody but people in their own household. So they have a lot of challenges going on, but at the same time, what can they do to make sure, if it is online learning, to be engaging, be structured and to also to be. I think they're very understanding this year, and they said they're going to be stricter coming up. But the circumstances themselves haven't really changed. That they're still in the same rut. They're still in the same boat for now. It just make sure what can we do. So there is structure, but there is understanding if there is an individual situation where somebody needs more help or needs more time, that they can try to give that time if possible for children who need it. So that would be my thought.
Okay. Just a quick question, Eric. How do you feel about rigid deadlines? You know, the homework has to be in by 5 o'clock on Wednesday.
Well, see, the thing is, I personally, for one student, that works well because they're good on schedule. Another one, it's just like you have to keep pressing and pressing and pressing. So it's just you said it best that you can't have really one solution that for everything. So you know you could have that's a standard. Like, hey, there's a standard deadline that it has to be in by this point. But if there is extenuating circumstance, I think that's what should be allowed. It's like, hey,
Okay.
either this person has some needs help or something else. That's what I would think. I would just say that.
Thank you. Courtney, if nothing else happens, what do you want school districts to hear from parents?
If nothing else happens, I think the first thing that I want is that there must be safety for the children. But I think Mr. Lopez said it, like there has to be structure, like notion of just willy-nilly sending packets around and lack of communication, lack of coordination. It took us, when I think about it, some of our kids didn't get their laptops to their families till almost the end of April. I mean, at that point, the school year is almost over. So there has to be, during this time, schools really thinking about how to really coordinate services, youth and families, and adding the broader community if they need to. For us in the Central Texas area, I think we have over 6,000 nonprofits. Like, make this a more collaborative community effort so that the information gets out to families, so that families are communicated to in ways that are culturally responsive, restorative, and transformative. And so I would say schools have to be more coordinated. They have to communicate better, and they must consider the children's safety first.
Whoa, thank you. Karina, if nothing else, what do you want to tell Houston Independent School District?
Well, I think that one of the things that I was looking at is like, I wish that I would like for, especially the younger grades, but even the older grades too, for them to provide like thematic units, right? So like reach across the subjects, working together so that there's more like collaboration, right? So that the kids aren't spending, I don't know, I think there's just better ways to do it. That's some of what I did at home with my kids, is like taught, maybe did Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, but did it across several subjects, right? And covered a bunch of different subjects with this thematic unit. I think that would be really good. I would like for the school district to have some compassion with parents and with children. Also with, as far as special education, reaching out to parents, reaching out to the students themselves. They weren't, kids weren't getting their services, and their services need to be given, and kids aren't doing so great. Some of them not doing so great with virtual school. So I had to do reteaching for my own child, and not every parent can reteach, algebra, pre-algebra, or whatever. And so that's an issue. And I think structure is good, but we do need to have some flexibility with parents and children, because, parents may not be home to follow something rigid or whatever, and kids are kids. So, and again, keeping our kids safe, because I just don't feel that sending them to school would be a good thing. And then I also had a question one of the questions on my mind is I wonder if the schools go virtual, are they expecting children to log in to put in a 7-hour workday, right? Because I think when you're working from home and you're working one-on-one, or when you homeschool, you don't homeschool for 7 hours a day. You do a couple hours, sometimes 2, 3, or whatever, and there may be days where you do other things. So that's my question.
Thank you. And those answers, each district and each school are going to give their own answers to that. Mercedes, what would you like to tell school districts that what grandparents raising grandchildren need?
I think what we all want to happen more parents should know that they don't have all the equipment that they need to be able to provide, whether it's financial needs or through the technology. So for them to be sensitive enough to be able to help them how to achieve that, or they're even providing some curves for the grandparents.
Thank you. Lourdes.
Yes. I think that that the schools, if the schools can provide the parents with the tools that are needed to be able to make sure that the parents are able to support their kids, because at the end, the parents are the ones that are going to be, pushing their kids, encouraging the kids, and helping the kids do their homework. And so if the parents can be given the tools that they need to make sure they do that. The other part is that there needs to be, I think, that some flexibility. This is a very different time that we're living right now, so we cannot expect for even for teachers, that they need to not expect that everything or the curriculum needs to or has to stay the same as what they were covering when they were in school. So I am not how do I say, aware of all those objectives or all those terms and all the things have to cover per year, per grade, per semester. But I understand that there is, they have to have some kind of accountability and some kind of reach certain things that they have to cover. I think this is a time where we need to be flexible enough to say no, we can, because then we're just adding burden to our kids and we're frustrating, because there's one thing that we haven't talked about, this whole the idea of their salud mental, the kids. Salir and be exposed to friends and share, like they're struggling already. So to have this whole idea of the homework and I have to submit it and it has to be done or I'm failing, that's the worst thing that the kids can now hear or experience.
One of the things that has come up in this whole process and in conversations has to do with the mental state of our children and our families in this condition. In other words, that aside from the pedagogy and the teaching needed, how do you support and care for their emotional state, how the separation has affected children, how it's affected families? Anybody want to speak to that, to the socio-emotional piece?
It's been very hard for my grandkids to be able to be home and not have that interaction with their peers. And then with the COVID, us not being able to let them go anywhere, it's just been very, very difficult. Their state of mind, like I said before, with the ADHD, they're bouncy, they're anxious, and now you confine them to the perimeters of your house and outside. I had to get them a trampoline so they can have some physical activity. I let them go up and down the street on their bikes, but I have to make sure that I'm out there with them. So it just changed. And then can I go to my friend's house, or can my friend come over? Can we have a sleepover? The 16-year-old, my girlfriend, they get invitations to go to quinceañeras, right? and they go here and there, and the answer is no, 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 no. And so it's been very difficult, and especially for that 15-year-old that has been in band and has been, playing football and has been active in school, and now he can't go do any of that activities, and he's gone without my permission because he's just out of control. It's like, I can't stay home, Grandma. You don't understand. And so it's very, very difficult. And then I get to feeling like you don't understand either, that you're putting me at danger at 65 if you contract a coronavirus. And so they don't understand that. And it's very hard to be able to communicate the time that we're living in and why we're doing all of these changes from schools to being at home. They just don't get it when they have those special needs, and to be able to provide that emotional and that stability for them. When you're a single grandmother at my age, it's very difficult. And somebody said it takes a village, I think Lourdes, and it does. It takes a village to be able to get these children to be, this is the way we have to live at this time. And getting the counselors and programs to work with us has been a challenge also.
Thank you.
I want to add, Eric. I want to add super fast. Even like my children who do understand, they do understand like why and the reasoning that they have to stay home. It doesn't make it any easier to stay home. I mean, they, just like you said, they're used to seeing their friends, and FaceTiming is nice, and they do that quite a bit, but it's not the same as being there next to a person and talking to them and hugging them and laughing with them and patting them on the back. So touch is very, very important. So even, both my children, luckily they say they understand the reason they want to see their friends. The older one wants to see her boyfriend, but she understands it's safety and health first, but it doesn't make it any easier for them to not be able to interact outside, just, the four of us here at home. So even with being, an understanding, it's very difficult not interacting with other kids face to face.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think I said before how critical the human interaction is, and I don't think that there's anything that is the sort of face-to-face, the hugging, the patting, the laughing together. But I think that our organization is providing some teletherapy, and we're doing some check-ins with youth. And I think if, as communities, we start doing that, I'm sure that there's lots of brilliant people who are listening. Our panel is brilliant. Thinking about how youth can check in. For us, they're checking in with social workers and counselors, and being able to talk through this individually and as a group of how it's impacting them and their families, and hearing from other people about how it's impacting them, and then sharing what resources they've used to get through it. We have so many puzzles in our house, or now my mom for the first time has allowed us to have an indoor basketball net, or so kids are communicating ways that it's been, for my kids, said they could have pets in the house. We now have a snake and a dog. We have to all, yes. We all have to sort of be compassionate and flexible and think about how the children are managing it, because they're seeing the same things we're seeing, or hearing the same things we're seeing around the numbers and the cases, and stuck at home, and they've never ever been stuck at home before. So I say that we have to really be creative and do what works for the children in our community.
You used the phrase telecounseling or something like that. I want to mention something that I've experienced in person, and also I had a Zoom session with about 10 of the Arise Center people from the 5 centers that they've got. And they're using this because Arise lives with home visits. They do hundreds of home visits every week. Mm-hmm. And so I asked the ladies, what's the average number of calls in a week you're doing now? Because this is their tool. They no longer go to the home and knock on the door, or nor do the families come to the center. Mm-hmm. And one said the lowest number was 30, the highest was 150. But what they're doing is a lot of it is counseling, because they say, I call a parent and then she calls me back. And sometimes it's just listening to each other. And school districts are not set up for that. They don't know how to do that. And I think that's you're talking about authentic communication. And somehow we need to get the messages. However you do it, the communication is so important. That mother in Donna who got a weekly call from the teacher was so grateful because it was personal and it was through the phone. Somebody else was, yeah. Okay, we're getting close.
You don't need a smartphone to do that.
You can use a dumb phone. A flip phone, okay.
Flip phone.
But the thing is, actually, these are not in every home, but they're a lot more present than computers. You'll sooner find a cell phone in the home than find a computer. That's a little bit harder. So anything else anybody wants to add, something that you want to emphasize about this whole thing? We've got 4 minutes. Ana, are there any other comments or questions you want to bring from the chat room or the Q&A?
No, we covered all the questions that were sent in.
Okay. It's been a fabulous panel. We've had an array from the largest school district in Texas to some tiny ones in Central Texas. And I know in the Valley, they're all pretty large, the districts you're working with. But North Side seems to have a good cred in terms of how it's been supporting families. And even with the best support, there's still challenges. And as we speak, the plans are still coming out, and there's teacher groups that are saying it's not healthy for us to come together with 25, 30 kids, 5 periods a day. Because even if we have masks, how do we space them out? And if we do flip-flop one day in school, one day at home, how do families handle that? Families that have to work and stuff like that. So there's no easy answer for this. But it is important that school districts hear what all of you are saying, because all of you.
One thing, Aurelio, you did mention about transportation, and one of my concerns is that Dr. Woods did say that they're going to check the kids as they go into school. They're going to check their temperature. But what about the kids to get on the bus, right? Who's going to check the temperature there? And by the time they get to school, they've already taken public transportation or school transportation. So nobody addressed that. They said they were going to be cleaning the buses, but are they going to take their temperature as they get on the bus? That's a real concern.
Lourdes, some parents in the family and a lot of the Colonia people depend on the school bus. There's no home vehicle to take them to school. And some of those families don't want to get their kids on the bus because they know the bus driver's not going to keep them separate,
Right, and there's no way. I mean, how we've experienced where some buses, there's even at one point there were kids that were standing up because the bus, there were too many kids. So how are they going to deal with that? Like send 3 buses for that particular area? That's not possible. By the time they get to school, it's going to be half the day gone. So no, it's not.
The dilemma they're going to have in the classroom to have the spaced desks, which means there's less students in the room, is the same dilemma in the bus. In other words, the spacing is a problem, the masks are a problem, and kids of all ages are going to want to hug and touch and push. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. And so we have to do that, and we want them healthy, we want them safe, and want to continue their education. So. One of the things that all of you represent is the intense caring there is of families for their children. That's something we know is true. Not all families are perfect and everybody has problems, but our families do really care about the education of their children. And the other part about it is that some companies think they have a gold mine because they have online programs. All parents are saying now valuing the human person, the teacher in a room and the interaction in a classroom. So at some point we hope to return to that normality, because it's necessary for a civil democratic society to have that mix. But it's also, from what you're saying, in terms of the mental health of children and their learning, there has to be that personal interaction. And I hope it's not so long before we go back to have one teacher and maybe 20 children in a room. Because when I was an English teacher and I had 39, that was a handful. I had juniors in high school. So raising teenagers like teaching them is a piece of cake, right? Okay, thank you all very much. Our time is up. Anybody have a closing word? One word?
Thank you. Two
Thank
words.
you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you
you.
all, and this has been recorded. Yes. Thank you for the panelists, and thank you for all the listeners. This has been a great webinar. Adios.
Thank you,
Adios.
sir. Bye.
Gracias.